It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast, the Saracens away edition. Connacht beaten 55-36, and that scoreline tells you the whole story of the game. We barely need a podcast, right? Yeah, absolute thriller. Connacht, stunning performance, and Saracens very, very lucky to get the 5 points. No, not true. It's a strange game. The scoreline is a bit strange, but here is the highlights. Great start from Connacht, then they sort of fell apart, but they dug in, got a bonus point. Really, really important to pick up the morale after disappointment in the last 2 games. On the pod this week, well, of course, you know, William Davies is with me. How are you, William?
Cold, Rob, actually.
Cold. We've been talking here a while.
Yes, we have.
We're recording this in reverse order. The actual chat we've done happened before this. People don't need to know that, though. Anyways, Alan Deegan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm happy that Connacht didn't give up. That's what I'd be pleased by, is that they didn't give up this week. They seemed to give up last week. I know they didn't, but they seemed to do. But at least this week they went on and they got their first ever try bonus in England. I'm going to keep saying that. People are going to get annoyed. I'm going, we've won 2 games since 1996 in England, and one of those wins was in 1997. So, like, we've only had one win, one win in all that time, really, when you think about it. So, yeah, I'll take any, you know me, I'll take any positive, and it is getting colder and colder here. So, let's hear the post-match interviews as well.
Yeah, I got caught up with Pete Wilkins, and I caught up with 200 cap man Jack Carty. Pete Wilkins, undoubtedly a much improved effort for Connacht, especially in an attacking context, despite the fact that it's such a high-scoring game.
Yeah, look, I think we've got to be proud of the response. We were looking for character on the back of the previous week's game, which we talked a lot about. We knew there'd be a lot of challenge, up against a quality team, and we knew they'd test us in different ways. So, proud of the character shown. I think that reflects in the scores that we got and kept getting all the way through, past the 80th minute. But at the same time, disappointed by the scoreline. I think some of those opportunities we gave Saracens, particularly the end of the first half, early second half, were a bit too easy, and it came from some soft errors from ourselves. And a team like that, you can't give them that kind of momentum.
Those errors seem to be coming on restarts. What's your look on there? What are you looking for? What did you say at half time, and what will you be looking for going forward to be that bit more solid after getting big scores?
Well, it's practice. I know that's boring, but in a restart sense, we just have to execute better. And, we made a slight change to the structure after the first couple today to give ourselves a bit more solidity on that side of the field where Saracens were kicking too. But at the same time, we're still getting errors. And, there's a few moving parts in that, but we have to get better at that because ultimately, they're big turning points in games when you don't secure that ball back into your own half, and the platform it gives the opposition, particularly a team like Saracens that will be very physical in that final third. As I said, that's in that bracket of freebies that isn't going to give you a chance to sort of keep tight games in that kind of arm wrestle and give yourself a chance to get back on top.
That Itoje yellow card opened the door, but you took your chance. Like a bonus point could be so important.
Yeah, very important. I was just asked there in an earlier interview, where does this leave us in the group? And I think we need to process that as the other games come in over the weekend. But we've got to go out and win these next 2 games. One's at home, obviously against Bristol, which we'll go after. Lyon away will be a great challenge, but one that we'll see some opportunities for. So, bonus point today is is something that could be a factor come the end of those stages.
I could make a case to you that both Saracens and Bordeaux could win this competition. Are you feeling that step up from what you might have been seeing in the early stages of this season?
I think certainly you can feel it's another level when you get into the Champions Cup, particularly playing teams like this. In terms of littered with internationals, but just that absolute clarity about how they play the game, their ability to squeeze you even when they're not necessarily playing well or they're having a quieter moment in the game, their ability to turn the screw and reverse momentum. I think it's in many respects it's international quality, and they're the players who've got on the field. So for us it's a great learning experience, but we can't use it as learning. We've got to use it as motivation. We've got to use it as a chance to get better. But what we're seeing across these 2 games is that the group are learning and we are responding in the right way. And as long as we've got that character and fight, then we put ourselves in a position to to do something with our rugby. And so that character and fight was there this weekend. And we've got to make sure that that intensity never drops.
Are you confident that Connacht can make an impact, can belong in this competition? I know that they're there on merit. I know that, they're definitely better than 5 or 6 teams in it. But like what we're talking about is win a game, contest for knockout stages. After what you've seen in the last few weeks, do you feel, we can really make ourselves... Because you need to do more, obviously, to put underline such a comment.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we have to keep striving for that. You know, that's got to be our goal, is to be competitive in this competition and get out the group stages and to be able to make a mark. Like, that's the ambitions of the place, ambitions of the club. You know, at the same time, you do that by getting outcomes even when you're not particularly playing well within games. You do that by coming to difficult places and getting losing bonus points. You've got to earn the right, and you know, for us, it's where we want to be. It is a challenge. You know, after this, we go straight into Ulster and Munster, which are two pretty important games in the context of our URC season, as well as the you know, obviously the Interpro bragging rights. So there's no easy games. I know that's a massive cliche, but this is where we want to be testing ourselves. And if it means we have to use more depth in our squad and have to rotate players a little bit more, you know, then so be it. But this is where we want to be.
6-day turnaround, huge game against Ulster. Flight coming home tonight helps, doesn't it? And obviously it's good news that the likes of Shane Bolton's getting through 80 minutes. Gavin Thornbury's return will please a lot of Connacht fans. Those kind of details are so important.
Yeah, they are. I think, you know, for Gav, as you mentioned, it's a year to the day since he had that knee injury, and he's fought his way back, and you know, he deserved to be in the starting lineup tonight, and I thought he did himself credit after that amount of time out. Shane Bolton, I thought, was terrific first start of the season. So they're real positives for us, and you know, you need that sort of competition for places. You need those guys who are putting their hands up even when they're coming off periods of not playing games, in order to cope with this sort of schedule, particularly at this time of year. So as you said, 6-day turnaround. We travel home tonight. We'll get home in the early hours of the morning. And we'll review hard, and we'll look to get the learnings from that on Tuesday, and train through next week and off to Ulster for Friday night. And you know, we don't get any more excited than playing Ulster up there.
Never stops for you, does it? Munster then after that, it's all go.
It doesn't, and as I said, that's where we want to be. We can't complain about it. It's exciting games, and they're big games for us, but very important for the club, and we've got to keep performing.
You're feeling better today, are you, overall, or are you going
Look,
to defeat?
it's a step forward. It's a step forward from last week. I think the defeat's always going to be incredibly disappointing, particularly with that kind of scoreline. But it is a step forward for us, and you know, we've got to kick on from here.
Jack Hardy, a hearty congratulations on your 200 cap. An individual accolade that is stunning, really. I mean, when you started playing rugby, I'm sure you could never imagine such a long career with Connacht.
No, certainly not. I think, obviously, the manner in the defeat, I suppose, today probably kind of overshadows it. I think it's something when I finish that I look back on fondly. The names, I suppose, who've done it previously before. Yeah, just trying to kind of put it to the back of my head for the majority of the week. I think when it was my 100 cap, I remember we were playing Gloucester, and I think there was made it out to be more than it was, and unfortunately didn't have the game that I'd wanted. But yeah, I think it's something that when I look back when I'm finished, will be something I'll be immensely proud of.
Like, I want to be careful because of the way Connacht fought back from a really bad situation of 43-17, got a bonus point and even finished with a try. You could see from the Connacht fans at the end, they feel better after last week. There's a bit of an uplift. There's no one suggesting for a second that you're happy with a defeat, but that is something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of, I suppose, mixed emotions because of the fact, you know, we shipped 50 plus points again this week. I think, you know, there was obviously conversations underneath the sticks in terms of what sort of team we said we were going to be and want to be, and I think it was I suppose we were at a crossroads. We could have kind of folded, and you know, maybe what had happened historically, we probably wouldn't have pulled it back. So I think, you know, many teams come here and don't get anything. The fact we got that probably gives us something to play for after Christmas in terms of Europe. But I think the piece that we need to kind of attend to is probably the amount we're conceding, and giving teams like Saracens access. I think, especially in the first half, the latter part of it, we gave them too much momentum, and when you give good teams like that, they'll take their opportunities.
I'm looking at that first half where you're 17-8 up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is as good as you could hope for. 28 minutes in, you've repelled them 3 or 4 times in your own 22, scored 2 hard-working tries for the pack. What was going right, and what changed in that last 12 minutes?
I think it was just probably we weren't accurate in terms of, we know how good they are with their box kick game. It's what they practice. They receive kicks, they'll build a box kick, and then they'll go really hard after that breakdown. We'd previewed it, and I think we gave away 2 penalties resulting from our restarts. They kicked to us, and then they go after it, which gave them access then to our 22. And we just, I suppose, repelled 3 of them. I think it's a lot to ask to do that constantly. So I think it's about, when you're playing teams like this, keeping them as far away from your try line as you can, and not inviting them into your own errors.
It feels like a big difference to the URC. I mean, with all due respect, it'd be the same in the Premiership, same in the French Championship. When you get to this level, especially against teams that have won the competition or are close enough to being serious contenders like Bordeaux, it's unforgivable, isn't it? It's ruthless, like.
Yeah, look, it's different, I suppose. You make a mistake and knock on or give away a penalty anywhere within your half, you know, that they're kicking to the corner and then you're defending mauls, which we did really well initially, and then, as I said, there's only so many times you can give big packs like that opportunities and access to your 22 and entries. So yeah, it's something that we definitely have to improve upon.
This can go either way now. Two huge Interpros. We've seen the past Champions Cup takes a lot out of Connacht and they can slip through Christmas. You obviously want to stop that happening. You want to get a turnaround here.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's obviously been a massively intense and long block, I think. With Ulster, I suppose we've done pretty well up there. I think if we can bring the same bounce and energy we've had today and clean up, I think, a few bits in terms of getting out of our half and giving them access, like Ulster do, to be fair, play quite similar to Saracens in terms of they've got a big maul threat, kicking game. I think if we nullify that and we win next week, it'll propel us, I think, to the second half of the season into 2024.
Look, we'll maybe talk about it another time, but well done today on the accolade anyways, and it's great to see you back
Cheers,
on the pitch.
Rob. Thank you.
William, what do we have there? A 19-point margin between one of the serious title contenders and the Connacht side looking to establish themselves in this competition. Probably is about right.
Yeah, I think so. I think Saracens were hot favourites to win this. Connacht give a reasonable account of themselves. Scored 5 tries, picked up your bonus point. They made a lot of silly errors. Small things cost them again. They seem to struggle with kick-offs when their ball has been kicked to them. Just little mistakes, and Saracens, I think, always felt they had the game in control. When they were 17-8 down, they upped the pace and they played well from there. But Connacht stuck in it. They were much more competitive than they were last week. They asked a few questions, and generally they have given themselves an outside chance of qualifying for the round of 16. They'll need to win with a bonus point in Lyon and win at home against Bristol with a bonus point. That's in January, so the focus now will change to 2 big URC Interpro games. But they've got a toehold in Europe, and it has shown how difficult it is. I don't know what to make of a game like this. I mean, you look at that and you think, wow, high scoring, brilliant and all the rest of it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure, like, if we're overseeing like an absolute hammering for Connacht, or if we can, like we have done in the immediate aftermath, latched on to a bit of character shown in the comeback and maybe a very good first half hour as well overall. 17-8 they led around 28 minutes.
Yeah, these games, not all of them. I mean, Leinster and La Rochelle last week was not what you would call an open game. But you do tend to get these games in this competition now, and teams tend to go for it at home, maybe send a weaker side away. Bristol have done that this afternoon. We're just keeping an eye there, in a bit of bother at half-time in Bordeaux. Yeah. So it's really hard to get a read on it. That was a mad game today in some ways. I mean, you wouldn't see many games like that in the URC in an entire season where you have 55, 36, 91 points scored. I don't know how many tries in total, but they had to make a little bit of a statement after last week. It was a shoddy performance at home, really messed. I think maybe their heads were messed with after Leinster. At least today they've come out with something and they've played a little bit of rugby, but they've still a long way to get back to the sort of rugby they were playing against Glasgow only a few weeks ago in the URC. And, you know, Ulster next Friday night in Belfast, New Year's Day at home to Munster. They got to win both of those games, you feel, in the URC, and they're off that pace at the moment. Different competition. Interpros are completely different. But a lot of things to be fixed.
Alan, you'll do the stats. Williams, I don't know how many tries. I think it's 8-5 was the try count, but at one point it was 7-2 when it was 43-17. You know, let me give you a summation of the game from my perspective, which is Connacht fired up by a really poor performance last week, made some changes, came out and executed a couple of really impressive attacks. scored 2 tries, really established themselves quite well, and then Saracen upped the ante and overwhelmed Connacht. 35 unanswered points either side at half time. And if it wasn't for Mario Auger losing his discipline for the second week in a row with a high challenge, I don't think Connacht would have got the bonus point. But once given the opportunity, he scored 2 lovely tries and added another one right at the end. So there's character there and there's something to build on. But it did feel once again for the second week running that the top teams in Europe are just really too hot to handle for Connacht.
Yeah, they certainly are. Connacht had the game at, with 10 minutes to go in the first half. The PA had to ask the crowd to cheer for their team because they were so quiet, and the crowd gave one of the bigger cheers. So obviously they like to be entertained rather than support, as I would see it, because it's up to the supporters to get behind the team. But they changed their intensity. They upped their intensity, and Connacht didn't quite live with it and made a couple of mistakes, and just didn't deal with the pressure that was put on them. I'm not sure whether that was they weren't used to the systems, the fact that they made 9 changes again this week, how that went. Guys weren't quite as in tune with each other as they possibly could have been. But you're looking at a situation that once Saracens got annoyed and up to the intensity, Connacht weren't able to deal with them. But what you would like to, what you are pleased to see is that last week, when Bordeaux did it, Connacht weren't able to do anything and decided not to. This week, at least, they tried and kept going and have scored their first ever try bonus in England and scored the most points they've ever scored in a match in England. And I was talking to one of the commentators from earlier on, and he said, it's not too many times we'll come to Saracens and score 5 tries.
That's true, but I do concern myself about, I'm thinking back to maybe 18 months ago when Leinster just completely overwhelmed us in the Aviva Stadium in the knockout game in this competition. And I'm thinking to these 2 games as well. I just feel like it's such a different world than 5 years ago when Connacht could come into it and really rattle teams and really put themselves about. Whereas now, it just seems like they're not able to compete at times.
I think the reason being, the teams that we used to play back then didn't come fully loaded, didn't come worried about Connacht. Connacht worry teams now, way more than they ever did. And now you're getting full-on teams. They're picking their best sides to take us on because we're actually have moved up another level. Now we need to go another level again, which is kind of hard to do when you don't have the finances and the financial backing and you don't have the resources coming through all the way. Because we're a small club, we're a small team.
With big ambitions, though.
With big ambitions, absolutely.
And you see, I don't think these players think that they're
of course
a notch
not.
below these teams. So that's the tricky bit.
Like
if they want, I think they'll admit that if they were to win here or win last week, they'd be kind of punching a little bit, but they think that's in them.
Yes.
They're going to have to do better on the basics if they're going to do that.
Yeah, they can't stop. They can't stop kicking to the most effective. The kick-off is a new set piece. Or the third set piece. You have scrums, line-outs, kick-offs. And our kick-offs, you don't want to kick it to the most effective catcher of a ball in Europe, probably, in Mario Toge. And what do? We kept kicking it to him. And you're going, no, there is another side of the field you can use. If he's on one side, you just kick to the other side. Why not change that up? Why not look at what you're doing and go, okay, let's think on our feet a little bit here. Yes, our plan is to go to the right. Mario Toge is there. Well, let's change it up and have a plan B and see what we can do there. And once we brought on the new players in the second half, they definitely brought something to the game. They definitely helped change things up.
Joe Joyce again.
I was also impressed with Michael McDonald. I thought the speed of pass that he brought definitely brought a new level to the backs, gave him a little bit more time and space. Tom Farrell had a cracking game.
Yeah, what I liked about Farrell, just to jump in there, he's firefighting. I mean, whenever someone's in a bit of trouble and the ball pops up, it's Tom Farrell that's there to tidy it up. He scoops balls off the ground and he gets on the front foot. There was one point where he took a ball way behind the gain line. He was snagged. How he wrestled his ankle free from the tackle, I don't know. Had he been tackled, turnover penalty guaranteed.
Yeah.
But instead, Connacht were on the front foot. I think that's what Farrell brings. It's those extra little details in the work, and you can trust him to be your firefighter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're looking at a situation where we're trying to find some positives out of this, because they were hammered. There's no question.
Yeah,
Connacht were
I
hammered.
think that's important because people will look at the scoreline. Alan. Not everyone was watching this at 1 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
And you know yourself, if you switched on, you'd be like, God, I have to watch this. This must have been amazing. It wasn't amazing. It had moments, but it was a one-sided game where Saracens opened the door with a bit of discipline and Connacht took their opportunity, which is why we're a bit encouraged by that factor.
And the fact we didn't give up. That's, for me as a Connacht fan, I'm looking at, do the guys fight? Do they go hard? Do they keep playing? Do they keep working for each other and trusting one another? And they did. Even though they were making mistakes, they got back on the horse and they went again. And that's a good sign for later in the season.
William, I still don't really know where Connacht are at. Like, are they better than last year? Last year, Connacht were technically a top 4 side because they beat Ulster and they deserved their place in the top 4. If we're really being honest, based on the table and everything, top 8, which was great. Are they still that in the URC? Are they getting any closer to bridging the gap to the big teams?
Well, if you get to a semi-final that you should have won, you have bridged the gap earlier on this year. They should have been in the final, effectively, against Munster. And that came through momentum. They backed themselves into a corner and they had to win 6 games out of 7, and they won 6 games in a row. It's not as easy to do that this season. There needs to be a more disciplined approach to performances, and they need to win games now. They can't assume that they'll just keep picking up wins. I mean, the last 3 games of the season in the URC are 2 away Interpros and a home game against the Stormers. That's a much more difficult run of games than they had last year. On their day, yes, I think they can beat anybody.
Not in this competition, though.
Not in this competition. No,
but we're back to the URC for a second, so that's fair enough. Keep going,
Yeah, we're in the URC, which is really the main competition. I'm not.
Why do you say that? Is it the main competition because everyone should make it the main competition, as in your domestic, technically, to use a phrase, or is it that
everybody
where Connacht can be competitive?
Everybody puts their domestic competition, with very few exceptions, ahead. If you look at the French teams, there's a couple of French sides get involved, but a lot of the French sides kind of go, we're not sure. England is probably the same. A lot depends. I mean, look, Saracens are top of the table in the Premiership, so therefore they can afford to go at this game. But they picked a very strong side. There was other people injured that would have probably have started for them. Connacht's role in this competition is to effectively find a way to get into the round of 16, get into the knockout stage. They made that very difficult after last week. You have to win your 2 home games. You can also use it as a springboard, but you don't use it as a springboard when you've lost 2 games and only picked up 1 point.
And ultimately, we're talking about one big loss at home.
Yes.
Because today was absolutely the hardest fixture of the entire lot.
It looks like it, because you would feel that they have a chance of beating Lyon in France, and again will depend where Lyon are on that particular day. Bristol coming to Galway might have nothing to play for. But this was always going to be very difficult, and it was made more difficult by the fact that they didn't get the job done last week. In the URC, I think there are 10 teams chasing 8 places. I think there are some. I don't think any of the Welsh sides are going to get into the top 8. I just don't.
Scarlets managed to lose to the new Georgian team yesterday, so they're in a lot of teams in trouble.
Cardiff are in this competition. I don't know how they're going to do, but they were beaten last week by Toulouse. Combination of Toulouse seconds and thirds, 52-7 away. So I think I'm going to give you a key game. It's a long way off. It's the 30th of March 2024, Easter Saturday, 1 p.m. kickoff Irish time, away to Benetton. That game is going to be absolutely key for Connacht, because they are going to be scrabbling with the likes of Benetton, maybe Edinburgh. That's where the pressure is. You've got to try to force yourself into that. There are a lot of winnable home games coming, but after the Leinster failure, and it was a failure, they had that game in their hand. What they have to do they need to pick up a game now. Ulster is the game next Friday night. So there's a lot of pressure, and people are asking questions, but there's also a lot of expectation. The expectation came from last season, and so far they haven't fulfilled the expectation. I agree with what you say about the players they have to feel they can come here and win. Otherwise,
Yeah.
there's no point.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also have to have a dose of reality and say, look, it's going to be very difficult. You need a bit of a Bordeaux attitude, but then they turn up with three. I mean, Damien Penaud is one of the best players in the world, and I mean, he had a phenomenal game. I know he only scored one try, but he was causing chaos for Bordeaux last week. I think we'll know an awful lot more about Connacht when they've played the next two games.
All right, we'll just have a little general chat to finish, but I want to bring it back to Alan and say, one thing that's striking me is, what is Connacht's best team? And I wonder, will we see it over Christmas? Because for sure, Damien Penaud is one of the best players in the world. Bundy Aki, Mac Hansen, Finlay Beelum, they're some of the best players in the world too in their own positions. If Connacht can get their best team out there, what's achievable against Ulster and Munster? Will we see their best team?
Well, I'd hope to see their best team, but you look at someone like Gavin Thornbury coming back and having a really impressive display. So you're looking at, well, what is our best team? We're not quite sure. The coaches don't know, and we're not necessarily sure, because who do you pick?
Well, there's a lot of changes, and we've discussed that. There's
Yes.
it's very transient at the moment, but people are wondering, is it time to kind of tighten
Settle
that
down,
a little bit? Yeah.
Well, because you're looking at, for me, the best number 8 this season would be Sean O'Brien. And
Yeah, we haven't seen
him for 3 or 4 weeks now, you know,
Yeah.
and you're sort of going, okay. And then Sean Jansen, you have to give that lad a chance, because he's, come from New Zealand, I know via England, but it takes time for lads to come in and settle down a little bit and get used to new systems. I think that's part of the problem, that we've got a new coaching team where we're trying to do new things, and they haven't quite figured out where our settled teams, and maybe they just have to say, okay, for the next 3 games we're just going to pick roughly the same 22. I'd like to see more of Michael McDonald at scrum half, because I'm worried that Blady's playing an awful lot of rugby, and the season is quite long. We can't afford to have him gone near the end of the season when we really, really need him, because I agree with William. I think there's a lot of winnable games after Christmas that will keep us ticking along in the URC. But yeah, I think we can go to Ulster and win. And if we don't think we can win at home against Munster, why are we playing?
Love it. William, Andy Farrell signed up again. I mean, look, at the end of the day, same old World Cup quarter-final failing on paper. But is it fair to say you got to look beyond that now? This was much, much better. Things are in a much better place.
Yeah, I think that was an inevitable decision, and I think they nailed him before anybody else could come looking for him. I think England would be delighted to have him. I know they got to the World Cup and they got further than us, but his son was playing well here this afternoon. He's a very driven young man. He'll also coach the Lions in 2025. I don't have a huge issue with him. I think it was inevitable that he was re-signed, and it's big news. Probably the last bit of big news that David Nucifora is going to be involved with before he moves on. The Snyman decision seems to have been driven by Nian Barr, who's taken over at Leinster. It also shows the power that they have monetarily. I don't know whether it's a good decision for Ireland or not. This guy has barely played for Munster. So there's a lot of questions around that. So it'll be interesting to see if that does get signed and sealed and delivered. Leinster usually get what they want. But that's been a talking point this week as well. And also worth noting the fact that there was Connacht players involved yesterday in the under-20s who...
4 Connacht players
yeah.
for the second season in a row. 1 or 2 have overlapped. That's incredible. I don't every so often, every 3 or 4 years, you get a little burst, and that's brilliant. And the academy's doing very well to do that on a smaller population. But just really encouraging. Maybe it's a bit of luck, but I'm sure it's a lot of hard work.
There's a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes in the pathway systems that underage, under 16, 17, 18. That's how these players come through. They're target identified, and there's good work going on in Connacht. And being a successful under-20s player doesn't mean you're going to make it as a full-time professional, but it's...
No, but if you're growing up in the city of Galway, rural Connacht, Roscommon, look at Darren Murray. Look at him out there today. 4 starts in a row, 2 in the Champions Cup. The opportunities that young sports stars have in the west of Ireland. We know the GA has an incredible setup from the Connacht GA right through to Galway, Mayo, Roscommon, Sligo, Leitrim. They're all spending huge money on their centres of excellence. But Connacht Rugby as a professional organisation, Galway United as a professional organisation, there's a lot of positives about sport in the west of Ireland before we even begin to talk about basketball, rowing, all those other elements.
Well,
these are huge opportunities.
The main issue that rugby has is these guys can make a career out of it.
And that's what it's the selling point, isn't it?
That is the selling point. It's a matter of that you can make a reasonable to a very good living, and be a professional sports person, and that's the attractor, I think.
And very quickly, as I said about Darren Murray, you can find yourself playing regularly at the highest level of club rugby in the world, really.
Yeah, I think that sometimes that's undersold a little bit. I mean, to go to the sports ground last week was a chastening experience for Connacht supporters, the Connacht team, the Connacht management, but to get to see players like Damien Penaud playing in the sports ground, and they turn up regularly. There'll be some South African World Cup winners here at some stage later on in the season, you would hope. Stormers might turn up with a pretty funky team come May, and that to me is maybe sometimes not used as much of a selling point. Come and see these guys. They're here, they're strutting their stuff, and Bordeaux strutted last week. They came, we're going to win this game. They weren't a French side that came and said, we don't know what's going to happen. They knew what was going to happen, and they were set up to win, and it's just the fact that Connacht really didn't get to take part in the game at all. So at least today, watching Owen Farrell, some of the things he did were poor. His goal kicking was poor. His attempts at chipping the ball forward, a couple of them were shambolic. But then occasionally he just produces a little bit of magic, and you go, yeah, that's why he's a Lions test starter. That's why he's played 112 games for England. And it's a great opportunity to see the best in the world, and it's a privilege to get to watch it and talk about it.
Right, that's pretty much it for us. There's no point of trying to predict the Ulster game right now, because we'll do that during the week. Right now, though, Connacht are flying home as we record this week. Pete Wilkins was talking to me afterwards, and he said, we'll be reviewing this on the flight home, and we'll be already setting ourselves. It never stops. Munster, I do believe there are some tickets available. You better get in fast, because it will sell out. What a big day that will be on New Year's Day. But hopefully Connacht can build on that second half late comeback and try and get a result next week. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, William. Thanks to you for listening, folks.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Side